Hi everyone. A disastrous trade deal has been negotiated between the European Union and the United States. Following intensive negotiations, von der Leyen flew into Turnberry on the west coast of Scotland yesterday to meet with Donald Trump and sign off on this agreement that would mean that it would be 15% on most imports into the United States in terms of a tariff. That's going to create major issues across the European Union and head towards the further deindustrialization of Europe. Now, this comes at a time when Trump was announcing a 30% tariff for August the 1st, but currently the European Union were looking for about a 10% tariff, and even Micheál Martin here in Ireland was hoping for a 0 tariff in terms of a free trade agreement with the United States. But of course, we have steel and aluminium still sitting about 50%. And as I said, the deindustrialization is well on the way in Europe, and watch for the fallout coming over the next number of months. It's going to be really, really stark to see. But of course, Trump has said that this is the biggest deal of them all, and he said that it's been rebalanced. It's been rebalanced in the favour of the United States. Of course, it's going to create major issues for the car industry across Europe, the pharmaceutical industry, manufacturing industry, semiconductor industry across Europe as well. And of course, there's about a 2 trillion trade deal that's been organised right across the Atlantic around this as well. But of course, the absorption of costs are going to be pushed back on ordinary people. Who's going to pay for it? Ordinary people. Of course, the Irish government are talking about an austerity budget. They won't mention austerity budget, but that's what's coming down the tracks over the next period of time. We see with the lack of cost of living supports for ordinary people. And at the same time, the deal is about more investment in the United States from European companies, up to €500 billion of investments. Not to mention a big deal to get long-term energy purchases of over 700 billion. What's not to love if you're Donald Trump doing the best in the interests of the United States and his friends in Wall Street? And of course, buying more military hardware from the military industrial complex. And this is a deal that was organised by von der Leyen again, who completely capitulated. That's putting it very, very mildly to the United States across this deal. But of course, von der Leyen has said it's a pragmatic compromise and says that it's the way forward. But of course, the Irish political response has been quite similar. The Irish political response has been, we've got certainty and clarity, says Micheál Martin, and we've got predictability and more certainty, says Peter Burke, the Enterprise Minister. And of course, it's all about certainty, according to Simon Harris. They're complete and utter non-entities in the greater scheme of things. What it does demonstrate in really, really serious fashion is the export-led economy across Europe. We've seen that specifically around Ireland, where they focused on the export-led economy, which has seen an explosion in GDP figures. We've seen that in Ireland, for instance, with the leprechaun economics. And also, ordinary people are the ones who are going to suffer the fallout of this, despite what they have proclaimed, and those political leaders who have sold out our sovereignty. Of course, it's probably like a treaty you would see in the 19th century towards a colonial power being subordinate to Washington DC, the European Union. And it's all it is. It really dispels the myth of the great negotiating power across the European Union and the strength of negotiating as a bloc. 15%, well, the UK got 10%, didn't they? But listen, we won't mention that. But of course, we'll say it's the strength of the bloc, rather than standing up to the global powers, essentially, for the interests of ordinary people and ordinary countries, and in terms of your nation's sovereignty, which has all been really destroyed at the altar of the drive towards a supranational European Union. And at the same time, we have these bureaucrats who are organising these decisions, people like Šefčovič, the European Union Commissioner in Trade, where the competency relies on the European Union rather than on nations, where we can decide on our own, essentially, industrial policies. We can work around the flexibility of trade and around energy independence and major issues, and specifically Ireland, around our neutrality. But of course, this is ignored by the political leaders at the altar of the so-called single market. And also, what's really important with this is that across Europe and across Ireland, we've seen it as well, with stagnation of wages. We've seen issues around workers' rights being eroded, and a low-wage economy. We've seen mass immigration again benefiting from that, in terms of those at the very top of society benefiting from it. So it just demonstrates that there's no vision on building a strong, resilient domestic economy with domestic industries, domestic producers that we support to supply ordinary people. For instance, food. 90% of the food that's produced in Ireland is exported. It's absolutely ludicrous. Now we have sky-high grocery bills in across Ireland. And why? At the same time, a lot of our industries have been decimated. And it's just been absolute lunacy, not to mention the fisheries industry is being sold off, and many more industries have been sold off. So rather than putting the interests of our country first and putting the interests of our people and needs of our citizens first, we have politicians who are just bowing down to Brussels and them in turn bowing down to Washington DC. They've done it through their proxy wars in Ukraine, for instance, and they're doing it now through this vassal trade agreement, which again benefits the colonial power and the United States in terms of their power and influence across the European Union. So it dispels the complete myth of the fact that the European Union is stronger together as a negotiating bloc, which is absolute nonsense, especially when you have people like von der Leyen, who has her own corruption charges against her. And of course, Emily O'Reilly, the former ombudsman, said that the Commission was being run like a powerful consigliere. So again, we see the mafia connotations happening right across Europe, and this is the way European Union is driving towards. So it's an absolute disaster. Even IPEC, for instance, have come out against it, which says something. So people will be up in arms over it. But again, listen, it just shows you the absolute lunacy of the European Union and this agenda of the supranational institutions taking away our country's sovereignty, taking away power in terms of deciding on our own policies, in terms of even on trade, which is vitally important, where you can negotiate from our positions of putting a strong, resilient domestic economy at the heart of that. So thanks for supporting my videos. Please support my videos. Please subscribe also to my channel. And from Dublin, Slán go fóill. Take care. Bye bye.